You don't have a mind control problem, you have a reaction problem. Every bad decision you've made started with a thought you believed too quickly. Every emotional outburst began with a feeling you followed without question. Every regret traces back to a moment when you let your mind lead and you followed blindly. Your mind is not the enemy, but letting it run unchecked destroys everything you're trying to build. This is how you take back control. Chapter 1. Stop believing every thought that enters your mind. Your mind produces thousands of thoughts every day. Most of them are noise, random associations, mental echoes of past experiences, emotional reactions dressed up as insights, yet you treat every thought like it deserves your attention. This is the first mistake. Not every thought is true, not every thought is useful, not every thought deserves to become action. But when you don't know how to separate signal from noise, every thought feels equally important. Here's what happens. A thought appears. I'm not good enough for this. You don't question it. You accept it. That thought becomes a feeling. The feeling becomes a mood. The mood becomes a decision. And the decision shapes your day, all because you believed one random thought without examining it. Most people live this way. They're passengers in their own minds. Thoughts arrive and they obey. Emotions surface and they follow. Impulses appear and they act. There's no filter, no pause, no choice, just automatic response. This creates chaos, because thoughts are not instructions, they're suggestions, and bad suggestions followed repeatedly create bad lives. The mind is a tool, not a master, but it will happily become your master if you never learn to question what it tells you. Think about the last time you felt anxious. Your mind probably told you a story. Something bad is going to happen. You're going to fail. Everyone will judge you. That story felt real. It felt urgent. It felt true. But was it true? Or was it just your mind doing what minds do, scanning for threats, creating narratives, preparing for worst-case scenarios? The untrained mind cannot tell the difference. It treats every anxious thought as fact, every worried prediction as prophecy, every fearful story as reality, and then it behaves accordingly. It avoids, it hesitates, it retreats. Not because the danger was real, because the thought felt real. This is the fundamental problem. You're not controlled by reality. You're controlled by how your mind interprets reality. And if you never question those interpretations, you'll spend your entire life reacting to stories instead of facts. Here's the shift. When a thought appears, don't believe it immediately. Observe it, notice it, ask, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is this thought based on evidence or emotion? Is this thought moving me forward or holding me back? That questioning creates space. Space between the thought and your response. Space where choice lives. Most people have zero space. Thought appears, reaction follows. No gap, no consideration, no control. But when you create space, everything changes. The thought still appears, but you don't have to obey it. You can acknowledge it and choose differently. You can feel fear and move forward anyway. You can think, I can't do this, and do it regardless. This is not positive thinking. This is not pretending negative thoughts don't exist. This is recognizing that thoughts are not commands. They're just mental events, passing through, temporary, only as powerful as the attention you give them. Your mind will keep producing thoughts. That won't stop. But you can stop treating every thought like it's gospel. You can start filtering. You can start choosing which thoughts to feed and which thoughts to let pass. The thoughts you feed grow stronger. The thoughts you ignore grow weaker. Feed doubt and doubt multiplies. Feed capability and capability expands. You get to choose, but only if you create the space to choose in the first place. How many decisions have you made based on thoughts you never questioned? Starting today, practice the pause. When a strong thought appears, especially a negative one, wait 3 seconds before responding. Ask yourself, is this thought actually true? Then choose your next move based on reality, not the story your mind just told you, Because control doesn't start with changing your thoughts. It starts with not being controlled by them. Chapter 2. Master the gap between stimulus and response. Something happens. You react. That's the pattern most people live in. External event triggers internal response. Automatic, immediate, uncontrolled. And that automaticity is what keeps you weak. Because between what happens and how you respond, there's a gap, a space, a moment where choice exists. But if you've never trained yourself to notice that gap, it might as well not exist. You'll blow right past it every single time. The gap is everything. It's where your power lives. It's where discipline replaces impulse. It's where intentional action replaces automatic reaction, and most people never even know it's there. Think about the last time someone said something that upset you. What happened next? You probably responded immediately, defended yourself, explained, argued, corrected them, all within seconds. No pause, no consideration, just reaction. That's normal. That's what untrained minds do. They hear trigger, they fire response. Input, output. No processing in between. And every time you do this, you surrender control. You let the external situation dictate your internal state. You let someone else's words control your behavior. The trained mind works differently. Something happens. Pause, observe, choose, then respond. That sequence changes everything. Because now you're not reacting from emotion. You're responding from intention. You're not being pulled by the situation. You're choosing how to engage with it. This gap training is not natural. It goes against your biology. Your nervous system is wired for speed. Threat appears, body responds, criticism arrives, defenses activate, pressure builds, stress hormones release. All of this happens faster than conscious thought. So you're fighting millions of years of evolution. You're trying to insert a pause where biology wants immediacy. This is why it feels uncomfortable at first. This is why it requires practice. This is why most people never do it. But here's what happens when you train the gap. You stop saying things you regret 5 minutes later. You stop making decisions from emotion that logic would have prevented. You stop escalating conflicts that could have been de-escalated with silence. The gap gives you time to choose your response instead of defaulting to your reaction, and chosen responses are almost always better than automatic reactions. Not because chosen responses are perfect, because they're aligned with who you want to be, not just who you are in the heat of the moment. Here's how the gap actually works. Something triggers you, your body tenses, your heart rate increases, your mind starts generating responses. That's the automatic part. You can't stop that, but you can stop what happens next. Before you speak, breathe. Before you act, think. Before you decide, pause. Just 2 seconds. That's all it takes. 2 seconds to interrupt the automatic pattern. 2 seconds to remember your standards. 2 seconds to choose deliberately. 2 seconds sounds short. But in the middle of a triggered response, 2 seconds feels eternal. Your brain will scream at you to act now. Your emotions will demand immediate expression. Your body will push for release. And holding that pause will feel like restraint, like suppression, like weakness. It's not. It's strength. The ability to feel an impulse and not obey it is one of the highest forms of self-control. The ability to feel emotion without letting emotion drive your behavior is mastery. Most people confuse expression with honesty. They think saying exactly what they feel in the moment is authentic. But unfiltered emotion is not authenticity. It's just lack of discipline. Real authenticity includes self-awareness, and self-awareness requires the gap. In the gap, you can ask better questions. Is this response going to help or hurt? Am I reacting from fear or from clarity? Will I respect this decision tomorrow? Those questions change outcomes. But you can't ask them if you're already mid-reaction. The gap also protects your reputation. People remember how you made them feel, and how you make them feel is determined by how you respond under pressure. If you always react quickly, emotionally, defensively, people learn to walk on eggshells around you. They learn you're volatile, unpredictable, unsafe. But when you respond calmly, deliberately, thoughtfully, people trust you. They know you won't blow up. They know you won't say things you don't mean. They know you're in control. And control earns respect. Reaction earns caution. How many relationships have you damaged by responding too quickly? Starting today, practice the gap in small moments. When someone interrupts you, when traffic makes you late, when something doesn't go as planned. Before responding, take one full breath, slow, deliberate, then choose your response instead of defaulting to reaction. Because the gap is not about being slow, it's about being intentional. And intention is what transforms reactive people into powerful ones. Chapter 3. Train your mind to quiet itself on command. Your mind never stops. Even when you want silence, it keeps running, replaying conversations, planning futures, worrying about problems, creating scenarios, judging, comparing, analyzing, endlessly. Most people accept this as normal. They think a busy mind is just part of being human. They think mental noise is unavoidable, so they live with constant internal chatter, and that chatter drains them, exhausts them, distracts them from what actually matters. But mental noise is not inevitable. It's a habit, and habits can be changed. You can train your mind to quiet on command, not permanently, not perfectly, but enough to regain clarity when you need it. This is not meditation. This is not spirituality. This is practical mental training, because a noisy mind makes poor decisions. A noisy mind misses details. A noisy mind stays stuck in anxiety, and a noisy mind never reaches its full capability. Here's what most people don't understand. Your mind generates noise when it lacks direction. When you don't give it a job, it creates work for itself. It churns through random thoughts. It revisits old memories. It invents problems to solve, not because you need this, because your mind needs occupation. An occupied mind is a quiet mind, not silent, but focused, all mental energy directed at one target instead of scattered across 20. That focus is control, and control feels like silence even when thinking is happening. The first step to training mental quiet is noticing the noise. Most people are so used to their internal chatter that they don't even hear it anymore. It's background noise, always there, never acknowledged. But you can't control what you don't notice. So start noticing. How often does your mind jump between topics? How often do you catch yourself thinking about something completely unrelated to what you're doing? How often do thoughts just appear without invitation? That noticing creates awareness, and awareness is the beginning of control. Once you can notice when your mind is noisy, you can begin interrupting that noise. The interruption is simple. When you catch your mind spinning, ask it one question: what am I focused on right now? Not what should I be focused on? What am I actually focused on in this exact moment? Often the answer is nothing. Your mind is just churning, no real target, no real purpose, just motion. Once you recognize that, you can redirect. Choose one thing to think about, one problem to solve, one task to complete. Give your mind a job, and the noise reduces. This is not suppression. Suppression tries to force thoughts away. Redirection simply gives attention a better place to go. Your mind wants to work, so give it work worth doing. When you do, the random chatter fades naturally. Another powerful tool for mental quiet is the exhale, not breathing in general. The exhale specifically. Long, slow exhales signal your nervous system to calm. And when your nervous system calms, your mind follows. 5 seconds in, 7 seconds out. Repeat. Watch how fast mental noise softens. Mental quiet also comes from closing loops. Your mind stays busy with unfinished business. Tasks you meant to do, conversations you need to have, decisions you keep postponing. Each open loop takes up mental space. The more loops you leave open, the noisier your mind becomes. Close loops deliberately. Finish small tasks. Make decisions. Send the message. Complete the thought. Each closure frees mental bandwidth, and freed bandwidth creates natural quiet. Most people resist this. They think if they don't keep everything in their mind, they'll forget it. But holding everything mentally is what creates the noise that makes you forget things. Write it down. Externalize it. Your mind is for thinking, not for storage. Training mental quiet also means protecting what enters your mind. If you consume chaos, your mind becomes chaotic. If you consume drama, your mind generates drama. If you consume noise, your mind stays noisy. Input shapes output. Always. This doesn't mean avoiding all difficult content. It means being selective, intentional, not letting your mind be a dumping ground for whatever grabs your attention. What you let in becomes the material your mind works with. Choose better material. How much of your mental noise is self-created through poor information diet? Starting today, practice one mental quiet session. 5 minutes. Sit. Close your eyes. Notice thoughts appearing. Don't fight them. Don't follow them. Just notice and return your attention to your breath. Every time your mind wanders, bring it back. That's the training. That return is where control builds. Because a mind that can quiet itself on command is a mind that can focus when it matters. And focus is where all real achievement begins. Chapter 4. Stop letting emotions make your decisions. Emotions are powerful. They're designed to be. They exist to move you, to push you toward safety, to pull you away from danger, to signal what matters. And when they work correctly, they're valuable information. But emotions are terrible decision makers, because emotions don't think long-term, they don't consider consequences, they don't weigh options, they just push for immediate relief, immediate satisfaction, immediate escape. And when you let emotions decide, you get short-term choices that create long-term problems. You say things you can't take back. You quit things you should have finished. You start things you should have avoided, all because emotion was in the driver's seat. Most people don't realize they're letting emotions decide. They think they're being rational. They think they're making choices. But underneath every decision is an emotional state. And that state is influencing the decision far more than logic. You're not choosing what's best. You're choosing what feels right in the moment. And what feels right in the moment is often wrong 6 months later. This is why emotional decisions compound into regret. You're making choices based on temporary states that produce permanent outcomes. Here's what happens. You feel anxious. That anxiety makes you want to escape, so you quit, or you avoid, or you distract yourself. In the moment, that feels like relief, but you just taught your brain that anxiety controls your behavior. Next time anxiety appears, it knows the formula. Feel uncomfortable, run away, feel better. That pattern becomes automatic, and every time you repeat it, you weaken your capacity to tolerate discomfort. You become more controlled by your emotions, not less, because emotions that are obeyed grow stronger. Emotions that are observed but not obeyed grow weaker. This doesn't mean ignoring emotions. It means separating emotion from decision. Feel what you feel, acknowledge it, validate it, then make your decision based on your values, not your feelings. Because your values are stable, your feelings are not. Most people reverse this. They ask, "How do I feel about this?" and let the answer decide. But feelings fluctuate based on sleep, stress, blood sugar, last night's conversation, this morning's news. Making decisions based on that is like building a house on sand. The trained mind asks different questions. What do my values say? What does my long-term self need? What would the person I'm trying to become do? These questions anchor decisions in something stable, and stable decisions create stable lives. Emotional decisions feel powerful in the moment. They feel like freedom, like authenticity, like honesty, but they're actually surrender. You're not free when emotions control you. You're enslaved by whatever you happen to be feeling. Real freedom is feeling anger and choosing calm anyway, feeling fear and choosing courage anyway, feeling unmotivated and choosing action anyway. That's when you're free, because you're no longer at the mercy of emotional weather. This is especially critical in conflict. When emotions are high, judgment is low. You say things to win the argument, not to solve the problem. You say things to relieve tension, not to create understanding. You say things that feel good for 3 seconds and cost you 3 weeks of cleanup. Emotion-driven words are almost always regretted because emotion wants immediate expression. It doesn't care about relationships. It doesn't care about reputation. It doesn't care about tomorrow. It just wants to be felt and released. And if you give it that power, it will use you as the release valve. The alternative is simple but uncomfortable. Feel the emotion fully. Don't suppress it, but don't act on it either. Sit with it. Let it peak. Let it pass. Then, when the intensity has dropped, decide what to do. That decision will almost always be better than the one made mid-emotion. Most people can't tolerate this. They need immediate relief. They need to say something, do something, change something. That urgency is what ruins outcomes, because urgency rarely aligns with wisdom. Wisdom takes time. Emotion demands speed. How many decisions have you made from emotion that logic would have prevented? Starting today, add 1 buffer between emotion and action. When strong emotion appears, wait 30 minutes before making any decision based on it. Use that time to let the intensity pass. Then decide from a calmer state. Watch how different your choices become when emotion informs but doesn't control. Because emotions are meant to be felt, not followed. And the moment you understand that difference, you stop being controlled by your own feelings. Chapter 5. Build the discipline to do what you don't feel like doing. Motivation is unreliable. Some days you feel it, most days you don't. And if your actions depend on feeling motivated, your life will be inconsistent, scattered, full of starts and stops. Good weeks followed by lost months. Discipline solves this. Discipline is doing what needs to be done regardless of how you feel about it, not because you want to, because you decided to. And decisions made in advance protect you from decisions made in the moment. Most people wait for motivation before acting. They think motivation comes first, then action follows. But that's backwards. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. When you act despite not feeling like it, momentum builds. And momentum feels like motivation, but it's actually just the result of starting. The problem is starting feels hard when you don't want to. Your brain offers every reason to wait. Later feels more comfortable than now. Tomorrow feels more possible than today. And waiting feels safer than risking effort that might not work out. But waiting is just another form of decision. You're deciding to stay comfortable. You're deciding that feeling good right now matters more than progressing. And every time you make that decision, you train yourself to value comfort over growth. Discipline is the opposite. Discipline values long-term results over short-term feelings. Discipline understands that discomfort is temporary but regret lasts. Discipline knows that the hard choice today creates the easy life tomorrow. And the easy choice today creates the hard life tomorrow. This is not about being hard on yourself. It's about being honest with yourself. You know what you need to do. You know what you've been avoiding. You know what's important. The only question is whether you'll act on that knowledge or continue negotiating with yourself. Negotiation sounds like this. Just this once. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. It's been a hard week. These statements feel reasonable in the moment. They feel like self-compassion, but they're actually self-sabotage disguised as kindness. Real self-compassion is doing what your future self needs, not what your current self wants. Your current self wants comfort. Your future self needs discipline. And every time you choose current comfort over future benefit, you betray the person you're trying to become. Discipline is built through small acts, not heroic efforts, not massive transformations, just consistent small choices. You don't feel like working out. You do it anyway. You don't feel like starting the hard task. You start anyway. You don't feel like keeping your word. You keep it anyway. Each of these moments is a deposit into your self-trust account. And when that account is full, confidence follows. Not because you feel confident, because you've proven to yourself that you follow through. That proof is what real confidence is built on. Most people look for confidence before acting, but confidence is the result of action, not the cause of it. You build confidence by keeping promises to yourself, small promises, repeated daily. Over time, those promises stack into identity, and identity is stronger than motivation will ever be. Discipline also removes decision fatigue. When you operate from discipline, you don't debate whether to do the thing, you just do it. The decision was made in advance. Now you're just executing. That execution is far easier than constant negotiation. Negotiation drains energy. It creates internal conflict. It leaves you exhausted before you even start. But when discipline eliminates negotiation, that energy is conserved, and conserved energy goes toward the actual work instead of being burned in mental debate. Another critical element: discipline doesn't require feeling good. It requires showing up. You can show up tired. You can show up unmotivated. You can show up uncertain. The showing up is what matters, because showing up builds the habit, and the habit is what creates the life. Most people overestimate what motivation can do and underestimate what discipline can do. Motivation gets you excited for a week. Discipline builds the next decade. Motivation feels good. Discipline feels normal. But normal is what changes everything, because normal is sustainable. When was the last time you did something important purely because you decided to, not because you felt like it? Starting today, identify one action you consistently avoid when you don't feel motivated. Then do it regardless of how you feel. Just once. Prove to yourself that you can act independently of emotion. That proof is the beginning of real self-control. Because discipline doesn't make life easier, it makes you stronger, and stronger people handle what weaker people avoid. Chapter 6. Reprogram your default response to pressure. Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your training. If your training is weak, pressure exposes it. If your training is strong, pressure reveals it. And your training is nothing more than your practiced responses under stress. Most people have no training. They've never deliberately practiced how they respond when things get difficult. So their default response is whatever feels natural in the moment. Usually panic, usually reaction, usually something they regret later. That default is formed through repetition. Every time you respond to pressure with panic, you strengthen the panic pathway. Your brain learns, when stressed, we panic. And the next time pressure appears, panic comes faster, more automatically, more intensely. This creates a cycle. Pressure triggers panic. Panic creates poor decisions. Poor decisions create more pressure creates more panic. And the cycle tightens until pressure becomes something you avoid entirely, which means you avoid growth, because growth lives on the other side of pressure. Breaking this cycle requires reprogramming your default, and reprogramming requires intentional practice. You don't wait for pressure to appear and hope you respond well. You practice your response in advance, so that when pressure arrives, your trained default takes over. Here's how this works. Identify your current default response to pressure. Do you freeze? Do you rush? Do you shut down? Do you lash out? Do you escape? Most people have one primary pattern. Name yours, because you can't change what you don't acknowledge. Then decide what response you want instead. Not what feels natural, what serves you, what protects your long-term position, what aligns with who you're trying to become. That's your new default. Now you practice it. Practice doesn't mean waiting for real pressure. Practice means creating low-stakes pressure and rehearsing your new response. Set a timer. Create artificial deadlines. Add mild stressors to normal tasks. Each time that manufactured pressure appears, practice your new default. Pause, breathe, choose, respond deliberately. This feels artificial at first, because it is artificial, but artificial practice in calm situations prepares you for real pressure in chaotic situations. Athletes don't practice only during games. Surgeons don't practice only during surgery. Pilots don't practice only during emergencies. They train in safe conditions so that when real pressure hits, the trained response activates automatically. Your mind works the same way. Train the response you want during low-pressure moments. Then when high-pressure moments arrive, that trained response will be available. Not guaranteed, but available, which is far better than relying on panic. Another key element: your body's response to pressure precedes your mind's response. Your heart rate increases, your breathing shallows, your muscles tense. These physical changes happen before conscious thought, and they signal your brain that danger is present, but you can interrupt that signal, not by suppressing it, by managing it. When you notice your heart rate rising, deliberately slow your breath. When you notice tension, consciously relax your shoulders. When you notice shallow breathing, take one deep breath. These physical interventions calm your nervous system, and a calmer nervous system sends different signals to your brain. We're okay, we can handle this. This interruption is training. Every time you catch the physical stress response early and manage it, you strengthen your capacity to stay regulated under pressure. And regulation is what allows clear thinking when everyone else is reacting emotionally. Reprogramming also requires reviewing past responses. After pressure passes, ask yourself, how did I respond? What worked? What didn't? What would I do differently next time? This reflection turns experience into learning. Without reflection, you just repeat patterns. With reflection, you improve patterns. Most people skip this step. They survive the pressure, feel relieved and move on. But moving on without learning means the next pressure moment will likely produce the same poor response. You're not building capacity, you're just surviving repeatedly. How many times have you responded to pressure in a way you immediately regretted? Starting today, identify one pressure situation you face regularly. Before it happens again, decide how you want to respond. Write it down. Be specific. Then the next time that pressure appears, execute that planned response, even if it feels unnatural, even if your old default tries to take over. Execute what you decided. That execution is the training. Because pressure is not the enemy. Untrained responses to pressure are. And once you train your default response, pressure becomes an opportunity to demonstrate control instead of a threat to your composure. Chapter 7. Practice mental ownership until it becomes your identity. Everything you've learned here means nothing without ownership. Ownership is the decision that this is your responsibility, not your circumstances, not other people, not your past, your responsibility, fully, completely, no exceptions. Most people resist this. They want to believe that control is conditional, that they can control their mind when conditions are right, when stress is low, when support is present, when life cooperates. But conditions are never perfect. And waiting for perfect conditions is just another form of avoidance. Mental ownership means you take responsibility for your internal state, regardless of external conditions. Someone disrespects you. Your internal state is still your responsibility. Life throws unexpected problems. Your response is still your responsibility. Things don't go as planned. Your composure is still your responsibility. This is not about blame. It's about power. When you accept responsibility for your internal state, you gain power over it. When you blame external factors, you surrender that power. You're saying, my mind is controlled by what happens around me, and when that's your position, you're helpless. Ownership says the opposite. My mind is mine. I control how I interpret events. I control how I respond. I control what thoughts I believe and what thoughts I ignore. External events may trigger responses, but I choose whether those responses control me. That choice is everything. It's the difference between being reactive and being in control. It's the difference between emotional chaos and emotional stability. It's the difference between a life that happens to you and a life you actively shape. Mental ownership starts with ending all victim language. They made me angry. No, you felt anger in response to what they did. This situation stressed me out. No, you experienced stress while in this situation. I couldn't help it. Yes, you could. You just didn't. These linguistic shifts sound small. They're not. Language shapes identity, and identity determines behavior. When you speak like a victim, you think like a victim. When you think like a victim, you behave like a victim. And victims are powerless by definition. Owners are different. Owners don't blame. Owners don't make excuses. Owners don't wait for conditions to improve. Owners ask, given this situation, what's my next right move? And then they make that move. That's power. Ownership also means accepting that change is slow. You don't reprogram years of automatic responses in a week. You don't master your mind in a month. This is long-term work. And long-term work requires patience. Patience that most people don't have. They try for a few days. Nothing changes. They quit. They decide, this doesn't work for me. But it does work. It just works over time, not instantly. And people who want instant results will never develop real mental control, because real control is built through repetition, not revelation. Ownership means committing to the process before seeing the results. It means trusting that small daily practices compound even when you can't see the progress. It means continuing when motivation disappears, because you've decided this is who you are now, not who you're trying to become, who you are. Identity change is the final piece. At some point, mental control stops being something you practice and becomes something you are. You're not someone who tries to control their mind. You're someone who does control their mind. That shift from trying to being is when the work becomes sustainable. Most people never reach that point because they never commit long enough. They practice when convenient. They try when motivated. They apply the tools when stressed. But they never integrate this into identity. And without identity integration, everything remains effortful. But when it becomes identity, effort decreases. Not because the techniques changed, because you changed. You're not forcing yourself anymore. You're being yourself. And being yourself is always easier than trying to become yourself. How long will you keep trying instead of simply being? Starting today, make one declaration. I control my mind. Say it out loud. Mean it. Then act like it's true. When thoughts spiral, you control that. When emotions rise, you control your response. When pressure builds, you control your composure. Act like someone who has control, not someone seeking it, someone who already has it. Because mental ownership is not earned through perfect execution, it's claimed through consistent commitment. And that commitment starts the moment you decide this is who you are now. That is how you control your mind, not by eliminating thoughts or suppressing emotions, by creating space between stimulus and response, by choosing deliberately instead of reacting automatically. Your mind is yours. Control it or it will control you. The choice has always been yours. Now use it.